everybody, welcome back to another episode of the No Easy Way Out podcast. My name is Tony Nash, and we are coming to you, as always, from the Armory in beautiful downtown Owosso, home to my company, AZ Business Solutions, where we help grow your brand from A to Z. So I'm really excited about our guest today. Our guest today is, I believe, an Owosso native, a member of the Owosso City Council, a world-renowned praise and worship leader.
I don't know world.
I think so. Pretty talented guy. A guy who's been very instrumental in really the comeback of Owosso, and we're going to talk a little bit about that, our small town here. But many of you know him as the co-founder, owner of Foster Coffee Company. Delicious coffee here in Owosso. Nick Pidek. Nick, welcome to the show, man.
Yeah, thanks, Tony.
Thanks for coming. Me. Now, we've had your wife on the show. I think she was on in season 2, and you and I have tried this multiple times, and our schedules always conflicted, but I'm excited we're finally able to sit down together and enjoy a little bit of time and let our audience get to know you a little bit more. Now, I met Nick through a mutual friend, Gordon Pennington. My sister used to take care of his mother, and I think at that same time, I don't know if you were there when my sister was there taking care of Anna, but you were kind of Gordon's assistant or something, or interning with Gordon. And if you have a relationship with Gordon, that's a story. There's lots of stories all by itself.
Oh, yeah.
But it's been really, really amazing for me to watch you kind of go from a young man to building this brand. I mean, you're involved in a lot of things, but it's really been cool, I think, not just for me, but for our community to be able to watch this brand that started down at the Owosso Farmers Market, slinging coffee, to this really great coffee brand that everybody loves. And that's Foster Coffee. So it's been awesome to watch you grow. And one of the things I've commented on a lot, like I always said, Starbucks made it really cool to hold a cup of coffee. Their branding and their marketing is awesome. And so from a branding and marketing guy, I want to say that you guys have really literally done that here in our community. People think it's cool to walk around with a cup of Foster Coffee. It's a really cool brand that people want to be associated with. So we here at the team are very impressed with your branding and marketing. So,
thanks,
so good job. And the coffee's great too, so that helps. So why don't you tell our audience a little bit about Nick Pidek, and tell them a little bit about Foster Coffee Company and what you got going on in your life today.
Yeah. So I guess brief summary, I'm a third generation entrepreneur. My grandfather was a chemist at Upjohn Company down in Kalamazoo, Battle Creek area. He quit his chemical job to become a photographer and opened a portrait studio. So my mom was raised in that environment. And then my mom and dad started a company here in Owosso called Flight One. It was a fixed-based operation, FBO, at the Owosso airport. So I grew up, 5 years old, watching Top Gun, pushing planes around.
Were you Maverick or Goose?
Definitely Maverick, yes. Somebody once commented, doesn't that have a really racy sex scene? And I was like, I just fast forwarded to that part because I was like, I want to get to the fighter action.
Jets, yeah.
So that sort of mentality of just being a family and working hard and building something, and sometimes going without because you got to pay the bills or do payroll or whatever. It's just kind of been ingrained from multiple generations in my family. So. Born and raised here. I'm 34 now. I live 2 blocks away from where I grew up on the same street. So my parents are still involved in my life. And there's, just a whole process of me living here and not really appreciating the community to coming full circle to realizing, that there's ability to make an impact wherever you are and not just leave and kind of stick up your middle finger and say, I can't wait to get out of this place. So that's kind of a brief summary of my journey and what started Foster.
Well, speaking of that, I grew up where, I grew up in the 80s and 90s. So I'm a little bit older, but a lot of my friends were like, I can't wait to get out of Owosso. And that was kind of the mentality. I always loved Owosso. I was kind of a hometown guy. I never understood why people were so down on it. But even I then had my exodus. I moved in 2008 after the big crash. I moved to New York. Worked in some hotels out there, and was gone for 4 years. And when I came back, I was kind of really, where I was at was a very strong economic area. The community was vibrant. The downtown district was really lively. And so I kind of got used to it. And when I came back, I noticed there was this apathy about Owosso. I would talk to business owners and people with this apathy. And then shortly thereafter, I was working at the Comstock at the time. I got to know you. I started working with Gordon a little bit more, Josh Adams, some of these guys who really had this vision to kind of revitalize the downtown district and build this sense of community. And you were such a big part of that, especially with your role at Foster and now being on the Owosso City Council. But I mean, I think now there's not that apathy about Owosso, and I don't know if you've noticed a difference, or maybe the stark contrast wasn't there for you. But I have found that people now have this kind of sense of enthusiasm about Owosso, especially our downtown district. And I have a friend who lived here his whole life. He now lives in Connecticut, but he came back and visited. This was about a year and a half ago, and he was just blown away by the difference in the downtown, even the little bit of culture that we're creating here. And so that's been really cool to watch.
Yeah.
It's been really cool to watch. So.
Yeah, I think on that, Tony, part of it comes back to, I think people will rise to the highest level of what they know is possible. And so I had the privilege of being able to travel in a band actually and see the country. I started going to Lansing Community College, ended up dropping out, was like, I just want to do music, traveled around the country, and you get to see all these really big cities. You see the Nashvilles, the New Yorks, the Austins, you see all these places, and it gives you a sense of appreciation for what's good about those places. But then on the flip side of that, it also lets you see, wow, there's actually some really great things about my own community. Yeah. And I think there's kind of like a tipping point, like for lack of a better term, you build up enough momentum of people who believe that the state of things that are right now does not have to be the state of things in the future. At a base level, it's faith, right? I can see something beyond what is possible right now. And I think it takes people that have that kind of crazy vision to I'm going to start a marketing business in 2008, when everything is tanking. Or saying real estate people, I'm going to start buying these buildings in a town that no one wants to really stay in and fix them up, because I'm just going to believe that people will fill them, and so on and so forth. So I think you see enough of those stories, and what I think is really powerful, you said before we started this podcast, the whole reason why you're doing this, you want to share local stories. The goal is not to be national. I think that's actually more powerful, because I can be inspired by Elon Musk, sure. But what I get more inspired by is, the Jordan Silvis who's making and building a life here and doing something creative. Because I know him, I run into him. It's I'll probably never meet Elon Musk. And his life doesn't really affect mine.
And if you do, he won't remember you.
Yeah. Right. And furthermore, what Jordan's doing or what you're doing or what Dan's doing or what anyone's doing here feeds off of each other, because then it ties into we're actually living in a community. We cry together, we laugh together, we go through the same struggles. I'm pretty sure the struggles that we go through here are not the same struggles that Elon Musk goes through. So hearing those stories is what's powerful. And there's a quote that Gordon said a long time ago, our mutual friend, we are a product of the stories we believe. And if we don't hear the right stories, if we just hear you're a failure, you're never going to amount to anything, this town sucks, you're going to rise to the highest level of the story that you believe. Yeah. And so I think that's what's powerful about the momentum that was built here. And it's really a catalyst. I can say flat out that anything that Foster has done is a product of everybody else. It's not just a Nick and John component. Everyone wants to look at Tesla and Elon Musk, I use them as an example, or Jeff Bezos and Amazon. What I'm curious about is all the other people that did a bunch of hard work that don't make the headlines, that are running the company, that are keeping it on track, that are inventing things. That's what's really driving that success. And I feel like that's what's, part of being in a community, is those stories being shared organically with one another.
Well, one of the things I think is really cool about this that we do here is, we had a guest, Josh Willard from Josh's Frogs on recently, and he told me that he has literally listened to every single episode that we've ever done, which surprised me. This is number 58, I think. But he said that's how he's gotten to know. He's not from Owosso. That's how he's gotten to know people in the community. He'll watch an episode and then he'll reach out to that person. Hey, I saw you on the podcast, and he learned things about them. And that's kind of been his connection to our community. And to me, that was awesome to hear, because that's really the goal of it. And, certainly to me, community is so important. Even in your in your brand, it says right on the back of your cup there, fostering community through coffee, and that's on the wall in your bistro. I guess the coffee shop, the cafe. I don't know what the official name for it is. The bistro.
Whatever.
Yeah, it's on the wall. It's on your branding. It's part of who you are. So tell our audience a little bit about that philosophy of fostering community through coffee.
Yeah. So in that same vein, John and I were looking at, the next stage of our lives when we're starting the company. And it came down to this idea of we want to cultivate something here. We see the potential. We're not claiming to be the potential. We're not claiming to be the saviors or the solutions. Like, that's not what we're setting out to be. But could we be a catalyst? Could we cultivate that? Could we bring in source A and they connect with source B, and that becomes the next thing that changes Owosso? And so what we found, especially in the music community, and this is really where community, I think, was birthed in us, is we would travel around the country, go to these venues, and build these relationships with kids. They'd be singing like the lyrics to our songs, and there was such a like camaraderie and connection there that we'd come back 4 or 5 years later, be some of the same kids, new kids, and there was such a connection. There was something that was built there. Where they were like, hey, the lyrics to your song, like, stop me from committing suicide. And you're like, wow, I just, wrote that in a dark place in my life in my bedroom. I didn't realize it would help anyone else. And so that sense of community, we came back to Owosso. We started going down some different career paths. John was I was actually in insurance at the time. I was working in marketing. And we longed for building that community here. We're like, there's a missing element that we're not part of. So either it's not here or we're not tapped into it. And I think that's something key to keep in mind is you may look around and say, that's not here. And I think we have to ask the question, is it because I haven't found it yet? Or is it because like it hasn't been built yet?
Yeah.
And to tap into what's already here, if it is there. So the fostering community, came out of this word cultivate. We want to cultivate something here. We want to create a place where people can come together. And I mean, community, you mentioned Starbucks tapped into the third space theory of, that's where first space is where you live, second space is where you work, and third space is where you have community. Mm-hmm. And you go into a Starbucks and, they've got a community board there. And that's kind of like their sense of community, right? Like they're on sides of highways and, off of exits. Some of them are in downtowns. But the intentionality of like, what else can we get involved in here? And so our approach with Cultivate, that was kind of the name we wanted to settle on, was Cultivate or Cultiva. And we found out that name was already taken. So we just pulled out a thesaurus and was like, what are some other words?
I've been there in sermon prep before.
Yes.
Gotta have
what
the
are some
alliteration.
other words we can use? And so foster came, and that really resonated. Okay, yeah, we want to foster that. So community is in our vision statement because, like you said, it's not just about the coffee. And we've seen really great, aesthetically pleasing coffee shops. I mean, we saw some of the best in the world in the biggest cities in our country. And so there's the quality there, but then there's also, we've been to coffee shops that are like, the coolest place to be, but their coffee sucks.
Yeah.
It's like, so we wanted to find the best of both worlds and kind of merge that together. Like, how can we have really great coffee and pursue that quality within the craft and really understand, the process of roasting it and preparing it and displaying it, but then also adding the hospitality component to it. And, I'm sure if you've listened to my wife's podcast, this comes out in her, and it's part of just our family ethos is hospitality. Like, how do we make people feel comfortable? How do we serve a great cup of coffee and make people feel welcome in our shop?
Right.
And it's like, I'm sure you've heard this in the marketing world. It's the Disney World model, right? Like, you're coming into our environment. It's like you go to Star Wars land and you're there and you're seeing like the Millennium Falcon and the Stormtroopers, and you're having this really great experience, and then you see a Burger King wrapper, you're like immediately snapped out of Star Wars world, right?
Yeah.
It's the same thing in story structure. Tolkien talks about this when he writes. He wrote an article about fairy stories, and it's not about fairies with wings, it's about fairy tales and fairy stories. And he talks about I try to take the green color from grass so that you can actually look at it again. And there's this process of telling stories, helping people see something that was there all along that maybe they didn't notice because they walked by it every single day. And so with hospitality is how do we help convey that story, make people feel welcome, make people feel part of that story. And that was our approach with Foster. That's where the vision came from. So, and that keeps us on track. It's the thing that keeps us up at night. Like, are we doing that? And it's the thing that gets us out of the bed in the morning. Like, let's go do that.
Yeah. Well, so I know when you say we, you're referring to your partner in crime, John Moore, and a lot of you have met John. Awesome dude. You guys have been friends for a really long time. You guys traveled around doing some music together. When did the idea for creating this coffee shop, when did that kind of start to formulate, and what came about there?
Yeah, so, John and I met in 9th grade in Corona High School.
Go Cavs.
Yeah, in 9th grade topics class with Leo Constein. God
Leo.
Bless that man that he put up with me. But I can say there's probably few human beings that have had such a dramatic impact on me, and John is one of them. Like, I would probably be dead or in jail or something not good if it wasn't for him. Like, my relationship with him changed the course of my life and my soul, and really helped bridge the gap for me having a relationship with Christ, and just put me on a much better track. So we've been friends for a very long time, but where coffee came in is we were touring in a band around the country, and he was seeing all these coffee shops. He was personally getting into it. Yeah. And so, over the course of months and years, like the van, we were traveling in a 15-passenger van. Dan knows, he traveled with us a couple times on a couple tours. Is very cramped. I mean, you have 5 guys in there and your stuff, and sometimes we put a mattress in the back. And John would bring like this box that kept growing of coffee stuff, and it was like a burr grinder. He'd get out of he'd bring the whole styrofoam thing, that comes packed in those boxes, and just start brewing coffee on the road. Pick up coffee bags at shops we were at and brew it, and so his passion for it grew there. My passion of business really grew in the band. I wanted to take things to the next level. It was like, okay, it's one thing to make art, it's another thing to sell art. So it was stuff like, hey, are we keeping track of all of our merch? And oftentimes we had more merch stuff than we had musical equipment, because that's what pays our bills, right? Like what you sell at the door it's not the venue fee. We weren't drawing large crowds, but it's like, hey, if we can get the 20 people there to spend $20, then that's some pretty good gas money back in
for sure
2005 or 6 or whatever. So when the band ended, we put out 5 albums, ended up parting ways on really good terms. And then John went into insurance. I went into marketing. But one of the things I had said is I knew John was really passionate about coffee. He'd worked at a coffee shop while we were in the band. And I just said, hey, if you ever want to do the coffee thing on your own, let me know. And I was just thinking, hey, I'll set you up. I'll help you with the business stuff, and then it can be your business or whatever. And I just remember one day I got a phone call from him. I think he had like a really bad customer call working in insurance, and was like, I'm done. Like, I want to be done with this. Like, how do we do the coffee thing? And so from there it was just late nights planning around his dining room table. And, we went and pitched to a bunch of different banks, and they all said no. They were like, yeah, it's a great idea. It's food service. It's not going to be successful.
Don't you hate that?
It's too risky. You don't own enough equity. Like, I was renting. John had just bought a house. So it was like we owned nothing on paper, essentially a value to a bank. And so I just remember making the decision, like, we got a booth at the farmer's market, spot 66, mapped out how much it would cost for the season, and knew what equipment we needed to get because we had a plan. And so we just whipped out our credit cards and bought some coffee equipment. I'm like, we could sell this off, right, before 20% interest kicks in. And that was kind of the germ and germination start of Foster for us.
Well, I remember those days down at the farmers market. Owosso, our community, has one of the state's largest outdoor farmers markets, and runs like April through October. And typically, 40, 50 vendors down there and a couple of city blocks, and live music. It's really, really cool. If you talk about community, you really get a sense of community when you're at the farmers market. But I remember when you guys were down there, and it was cool. A bunch of young people slinging coffee, and the coffee was really good. Actually, I'm drinking the first thing I ever drank. The farmers market vanilla, and it's still my favorite drink from Foster. I remember doing that, and then I remember you guys seeing a shop pop up, and like I said, it's just been really, really cool to watch that and to get to know you and John through that. And I think what you guys are doing is great. And now you guys have 3 locations. You have a location in Flint, and then in East Lansing, right on the college campus. Both of those are really cool. I love the East Lansing location. Every time I'm in East Lansing, I stop over there and get some coffee.
Awesome.
But what has been, so I mean, we speak of entrepreneurship, and the story of starting at an idea, a dining room table, late nights, putting stuff on your own credit cards, kind of going guerrilla style and just doing it, using some social media, trying to get the word out there, to actually having your own shop and really having a brand that's like, this is an actual business now. And then I remember that moment where I felt like even my business was like, oh no, this is a real business now. This is no longer just an idea. Like, now I got to like do this. And it's both fun, it's exciting, but it's also scary at the same time. Like, oh no, now I own this thing and I got to do that. So, kind of talk us through the process of, I know we know what kind of led up to getting it there and having your first location, but then even what kind of was the process in getting to a second and third location, and maybe what are some of your future plans on that? And I know COVID has hampered a lot of everybody's future plans, especially in the business world, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. But kind of bring us up to speed of what led to location 2 and then 3, and kind of what's the mindset about that expansion?
Yeah. So the big leap, it's one thing to start a coffee company in your own hometown around community. There were a lot of relationships that we already had from just having lived here for such a long time. The Flint location was really a connection through a friend of mine that said, hey, there's this project going on in downtown Flint. I want you to take a look at it. So we went over there, looked at the building, looked at what they were doing. It's a co-working space similar to the Armory here. It's the old Ferris Furs building in downtown Flint on Saginaw Street. And we just saw this kind of same kind of germ of spirit, of like this genesis of a spirit that we had saw in Owosso too, of just people who were like, we believe in this community, we care about this community. Are there things wrong with this community? Absolutely, but we're not going to allow that to stop us from trying to do something good. And it was that same sort of spirit within the people there, people that were moving there, coming from outside of Flint to want to invest in the community. And I think that says a lot about a community when it's not just the people who are there, but outside people are coming in. I mean, you even take a short history lesson of Owosso. Most of the people that came here and started industries, look at the Comstock family, they came from New York. The Gould family came from New York. Like, people came from other places.
Thomas Dewey came from New York.
Yeah, this is back when no one lived here except Native Americans.
Yeah.
So, but that sort of what you can bring from the outside, the talent, the ideas. Otherwise, you just become like to use this term, like a lake or a body of water that has no outflow or inflow becomes stagnant, and we need that outside influence. So a little thing about Owosso, but with Flint, we started seeing what was happening there. We're like, hey, we want to be part of this. This is really, really cool. Flint held a deep place in our heart. It's where we played our first show at the Flint Local downtown. We'd been going there quite a bit since we were young, and we're able to go over there. Our parents would drive us over, or we could drive over there. And so that was, and we just ultimately were like, hey, we want to be part of this. We want to be part of the community that's growing here and that's already been here, and be part of this history. The history that's here, we want to be part of this next wave. So that's what sparked that. The East Lansing location, actually somebody, a mutual acquaintance of mine and John had sent us over a deck that was like, hey, there's this new project going into downtown East Lansing. We were kind of looking at with the Flint component. We knew it was like, hey, if we want to build this company, it can't just be like a single cafe. Like, it's great, we want to do that. We're never going to forget, that core genesis of why we started in Owosso, but we want to take this to new levels, to new places, and see if the model works, right? If we found something that's universal, that can work in any community, then we'll know that when we go to these other locations. So, I mean, Foster is still a model and thesis in process. Like, it's not finished, it's not done, and we're still growing and changing how we approach things. So we saw the project that was going in downtown East Lansing, and we saw like there were no craft coffee shops down there at the time. Shortly thereafter, Blue Owl had announced they were opening a location there, and good people. They're like right across the street from us. And, it's a huge college town that was, we think it was really underserved with craft coffee. And again, we could take that same approach. And not only that, like for us, it wasn't just about the college students. It was also about the community. We spent about a year just meeting people, kind of how like Josh, listens to this podcast to get to know the community. I just started meeting with people.
Yeah.
We actually, a friend of mine that's really plugged in there, I was like, I just want to know who's here. I want to meet people before we make a decision. And that's what we did. We met people at MSU. We met people at the senior center. We met some people that led community housing groups there. Just because we're like, it's not just the 50,000 or whatever students that are there. It's also the 15,000 people, similar to Owosso, that live there year round that we're going to be part of. So those two things, the development project, we saw their vision. They didn't want a Starbucks. They didn't want this like cookie cutter generica model where it's like you go to any city and it's like if you see a Starbucks, you can like close your eyes and go like, oh, there's a Chick-fil-A there, there's a Home Depot there,
right?
There's probably a Panera Bread right there, and a Panda Express, and a Chipotle. Like I just named like every community in America, right?
Yeah. That's true.
And then you lose the essence of like what's unique about that place. So we saw that with the developer and said, yeah, we want to be part of this.
Yeah. Well, I think one thing that you said that I really liked is, how Foster is not done. It's still, especially in your guys' mind, it's still a concept, right? You're still proving the concept. And I think that's an important thing for entrepreneurs and business owners to realize is like, you can't and should never get to the point where you feel like, okay, it's done now. Like there's always things to consider and to prove and to work on, to grow what it is, its exposure, how it's presented to the public, how it works on the back end, profit and loss, if that's even a thing. I mean, being an entrepreneur, like, the idea of profit is like, profit? What are you talking about? I've only been doing this for a couple of years. It's challenging, right? I mean, of course, you grew up in it. I didn't grow up in that environment, but all of those things. The name of our podcast is the No Easy Way Out podcast. Comes from a couple of things. Number one, I love Rocky IV, and the song No Easy Way Out is one of my favorites of all time. It's the only movie I've ever cried on. But that motto of not taking the easy way out, I think every entrepreneur in their journey has to overcome some difficult things in order to really achieve their goals and their vision. I hate to even use the word success because that means so many different things to so many different people. But I'm really big on, I meet so many young people. Excuse me. I meet so many young people who love the idea of being an entrepreneur. And you and I both know everybody's not an entrepreneur, and that's okay. That's okay. But the idea of being an entrepreneur sounds like fun. And so they all want to know, what's the shortcut to success? What's the quickest way to get there? And of course, I think if you can find the quickest way, that's good. But you have to do the difficult things. You have to hit those days where it's like, why am I even doing this? Or those days where it seems like, okay, I got to pay the staff, but that means I can't pay myself. And dealing with those difficult clients and all of those things that come up, there are difficult things on the path. So one of the things I always like to ask our guests are, what are some of the difficult things that you and John have had to really tackle and overcome in order to really continue to push towards meeting your goals?
I would probably say the biggest focus for us, at the height of pre-COVID, we had close to 40 employees that stretched from, a marketing team, accounting team, and then 3 managers and baristas across all the locations. I think the biggest thing for us, and what's the biggest challenge? It's both a challenge and I think one of the behind the scenes component that we love and hate it. And by hate it, it's not the people. It's just the aspect of you can create a spreadsheet, and the spreadsheet is the inputs, the formula, and the output.
Right.
It's pretty predictable, right? It's numbers. But human beings are extremely complex. And especially in the hospitality business. I mean, you know this because you being in hospitality and hotels, how you're treating your guests. You're literally giving them a place to sleep and to feel comfortable. That's what we're trying to take is somebody who maybe has, and we don't really hire based off of coffee experience. We hire off of some key components of can you do the difficult thing? Can you sweep and clean these nooks and crannies, and be accountable to your coworkers, and
deal with difficult customers.
Yeah. And do you handle high stress situations, because you're going to have a line of people out the door at some point, and like something's going to break. So how do you handle that? And so that challenge of just seeing, people who come in, baristas that hire in, that maybe this is their first job. We've hired many of them that Foster was their first place of employment. And to see, those ones that rise to the occasion. And like, that's the most rewarding and challenging thing, is seeing like them become a different person. Like, they don't even work at Foster anymore, but it's like they're still on the path of what they want to do. And that's one of our core questions we ask somebody before they even come on board, is like, what do you want to do in life? Like, if it's coffee, great. It may be here, it may not. But if it's not coffee, which is the majority of people who are working at our company, then what do you want to do? Because maybe we can find something in this time that you're here. We want to make sure our vision is this. This is where we're going. We're very clear about this is what we're doing. This is how we're doing it. These are our core values. And we fire and hire by the core values, because it doesn't matter your skill level. If you align with the core values, we can train you the skill. Like, we've trained many people over the course of these years, probably over 100 people, on how to make and pull espresso shots to our specifications. That's not the issue. It's training them to be able to do that and have a conversation with Tony, and behind the scenes something is broken, and you're still like giving you a great experience.
And Tony doesn't even realize it.
That's what we're looking for. So that process times 40 people times all, 5 years now being in business across a roastery department, marketing, barista, manager, it's all this process of working with people. And it's challenging, because at each location it's different. The people are different. Their expectations are different.
Community culture is different.
Yeah. You also want to create an environment where you can get their feedback, but then also there comes a point too where we've actually had to like share from our perspective. Like, I get that you think that this is what should be, but let me share an example of like what we're seeing that you don't, and communicating that, the open street. Sometimes it's a challenge, but at the end of the day, it's like, we're just trying to make our communities better. We're trying to do it in a way where we can continue to exist as a for-profit, with a mindset of how do we make a positive impact where we're at. So that's the most challenging.
Well, it's interesting that you say that, because, really what any business is, it's about people. It has to be, because no matter whether you're providing a service or creating a product or something, you have to serve that or deliver that to people, or you don't have a business. Somebody has to buy your product in order for it to be a business. And particularly in hospitality, as you mentioned, I was in hospitality for 10 years. At the height of my hospitality career, I used to actually do hospitality management training. And I had this 4-hour seminar talking about how to manage employees. And I would always begin the seminar with, the thing that I love the most about working in hospitality is that I get to work with people every day. And the thing that I have found the most challenging about working in hospitality is that I have to work with people every day. Because working with people is fun and exciting and challenging and all those things, but sometimes it's very difficult, because like you said, people are so unpredictable. There's no spreadsheet that you can put them in. There's no box that you can put them in. And an effective manager, we would talk about, can't manage every employee the exact same way, and they can't handle every guest or customer the exact same way. And so really, part of owning a business or managing people or dealing with the customer, I think one of the most important things people can do if they really want to be successful is get to know people. Even before you get to know what it means to be a manager, get to know how to understand people, how to empathize with people, how to read people, how to understand what they're going through. I've had managers, when I was in New York, I had a lot of success in the hospitality industry, and I would have managers twice my age come up and say, hey, what's the key, man? You guys went from, number 600 in the brand to top 3%. You're number one in New York State. Like, what's the key? And I'm thinking, well, number one, at that time, I didn't have a key. I was just like, I had 7 years of experience as a pastor, and then I was raised in the Midwest, so I kind of already had a little bit of hospitality in my blood. So at that time, I was just like, I think the key is just treat people the way you'd want to be treated. And when I said it, it was just like, because I didn't really know. I was just doing what I thought was the right thing. But as I've learned, I think that was actually a brilliant statement, because really the key to serving a customer is treat people the way you would want to be treated. And that's Bible, right? I mean, we learned that in Scripture. Do unto others as you'd have them do unto you. They call it the golden rule. And so, I think that's a good thing to focus on. If you're an entrepreneur, if you're running a business, starting a business, thinking about it, that challenge of how to relate with my people, how to help my people, how to serve my people. Again, whether that be your employees, whether that be your customers, whether that be your partners, whether that be your vendors, your lenders, it's all people. And so I think if you're listening on that level, get to know people, get to know your people, get to know the people around you, get to know the people you serve. And I think that will be a very vital key in your success. So real quick now, so today, still the co-owner of Foster Coffee, 3 locations, Owosso, Flint, Lansing. You guys are now also roasting your own coffee. You made a roastery here in Owosso, and so you're serving not just your 3 locations, but you also have other coffee shops that are using you to roast their beans, and you can buy their coffee by the bag, roasted or just whole bean. But also you're involved in several other things. Because you love our community, you joined the Owosso City Council, and something actually, I didn't know if you knew this, something I'm contemplating in 2022. So we need to have a conversation off mic about that and your experience there.
Well, and you don't just join, you have to get elected. So there's the whole process.
That's what I mean. I'm thinking of running in 2022. Yeah. And because I do love our community, and I think that, I have a unique perspective, and I would like to at least be able to have a seat at the table. But I want to talk about and then also you're involved now with a cybersecurity company. So you got your hands on a lot of different things. But I want to talk real quick about what it is that you love most about this community. Like I said, you're involved in other communities, and I don't think that takes away from what you love about Flint or about Lansing, but Owosso is your hometown. Mm-hmm. And so what is it about our community here in Owosso that you love the most?
The people. Easy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's, you said, you kind of charge the listeners, know people. I think every journey of knowing people has to first start with knowing yourself. Mm-hmm. And that was my journey I kind of went through this identity crisis where I had broken up with a girlfriend at the time who's not my wife now. And the band had just ended, and it was kind of like all these things that I had put my identity into. It's like, I'm doing this, I'm doing that, right? Like, mm-hmm. I'm in the band, and you have to come to a place where you know yourself. Mm-hmm. And that I went through this process of having to learn about my family history. Where did I come from? And, George Santayana said, those who don't know history are doomed to repeat it. There's something so powerful about knowing our history, even if it's a bad history, even if our family history isn't great, even if you don't have a great story of my parents didn't get divorced and, they were all entrepreneurs. Cool. That puts me in a very small class of very blessed people. And then there's other people that have terrible stories where their parents didn't care about them. But knowing that story, knowing where you came from, allows you to be able to set the stage for knowing other people. And I had to go through that. I had to go back and say, what is the history of this community? And I ended up, joining the Historical Commission and learning about the history of Owosso and the Comstock family and the Kerwood family and just about why Owosso was what it was. And if you drill back into the history, you see this place used to be a powerhouse of industry.
Oh, yeah.
We had 5 major railroads here, Woodard Furniture, a massive company that's still in existence today.
M21 and M52 were a major crossroads in the state of Michigan. The 2 roads that are kind of our main roads. Now, when the expressway came, it kind of we became like Radiator Springs from the Disney movie. But yeah, I mean, M21 and M52 were major thoroughfares of crossroads in the state of Michigan. So a lot came through Owosso.
Yeah, so, just knowing about my history, and I remember having lunch with my mom and just asking her questions about what was your childhood like? What did you like? What did you not like? Excuse me. And it was I grew up, this woman raised me, and I barely even asked her any questions about who she was. And maybe that was just being naive and young, and I want to go do music and do my thing. You don't understand me. And I was kind of oh, I need to shut up and swallow this ego and pride and start learning from people that are around me, learning from the people who built long before we did. And the fact that we have any modicum of success here in Owosso is because other people poured their lives into these streets, into this community long before us.
Right.
You know, there's a saying from Lord Salisbury from the 1600s. It's like, we stand on the shoulders of giants, not that our stature is greater than theirs, but because of them we can see farther. Like, we have to understand, we see into the future because of the people that have given their lives, literally, figuratively, to allow us to be able to see that. If we don't appreciate that, if we don't look back at that, I think we're missing a key component. And so the people is part of that. People is, you know, understanding who you are and understanding that we're part of this narrative, this grand story of the people we run into on the street. That, like, when we go to the farmer's market, it's like, you know, and sometimes it'd be nice in some ways when you want privacy to, like, you want to go out to the store. Like, here you just have to assume you're going to run into somebody you know, right? Like,
every
other
time.
Communities, you may be able to just go in and go out and no one knows your name. But that's something that was even highlighted further when we started Foster, and even was revamped in our minds during COVID, is that we always say, you have no idea. Like, we say people's names, we write it on the cups, and we say their name, because we have this idea that we don't know that if that person is ever recognized as who they are. They may be coming in and they may be going right home, and maybe no one ever says their name. And you drill into the science of your name being said, that being known and recognized. There's a dopamine that fires off in your brain when your name is said. Now, it's not like, you know, eating sugar or something like that. It's not to that degree. But what it is it's a recognition that I've been recognized. And we talk about it. It's like a warm welcome, an excellent experience, and a fond farewell. Like, there's three components to that. Greet people when they walk in the door. Hey, Tony, glad you're here. I'll be with you in just 1 second. Serve you very well, answer your questions, engage with you. And then when you're leaving the building, say bye, to let you know that I have recognized your existence. And that may seem like a trivial small thing, but it's built off of this premise of community, that, like, you are a human being that matters. I may not know everything about your story, but for this moment that you're in my life, I'm going to focus on you and recognize you as a person. And I think that is the key to winning our country back. You know, this gets into, like, a whole conversation about, you know, the divisions that are in between race and ideas and ideologies and all this stuff. I really believe that the hope for our country is coming back to the basics of community, where you can share those stories, where I learn your story versus my story, because you're a real human being. And you're sitting in a coffee shop. Like, I have this grand vision. I don't know if it'll ever be a commercial we do at Foster, but it's like, if we ever had like a Super Bowl commercial, this is what I would do. It's like, you know, show like a Democrat, like at a Democratic rally, like with a picket sign that says, don't do this, right? Don't do this, right? And then flashes to another scene of like a Republican at another rally, just as heated, and they're chanting, do this, do this. Right. And they both are like passionate about these two opposing ideas, whatever it is. And then it flashes to them like coming back to their hometown, and one of them opens the door for the other one walks in, they're chatting, getting a cup of coffee, and then they leave that coffee shop with all the pleasantries of just knowing, oh, that was Tony, and I opened the door for him. See you, have a great day, Tony. Just the dichotomy of the fact that, like, we are human beings that have very different opinions and ideas, but at the core, if we cannot dehumanize them, that is the core of, like, you look at any genocide, it is all built in dehumanization of human beings. And we have to get back to recognizing people. And that's what I love about Owosso. There's this core here that, like, we are people. We don't all agree. Certainly being a city council member, like, I see the people that don't agree with the decisions we make. You know, we're basically the punching bags in most instances of the decisions that are made that are unpopular. But I can still run into them at the coffee shop, or I can still run into them at the street and share with me why. And I can share my story instead of yelling online, which it's not changing anybody's mind. Like, I don't even engage in that, because it's like, I would rather just have a conversation with someone.
I couldn't agree more. And I think, you know, another thing I used to say with my employees is, you know, when it came to conflict resolution, is 99% of conflict can be resolved with a conversation. And I think that's so true today. And I think that's been one of the biggest challenges of this COVID world that we're living in is people don't look each other in the eye. They can't meet in person. Well, they're technically not supposed to. And so people aren't having conversations. So they're going online and making these very bold statements on both sides. And then it's only rebutted by comments below that have no tone or no context. And so people are getting angry. And I've seen people losing friendships over political views or religious views or whatever. And you're like, wait, I know that person supports that candidate or believes that way, but that's just Nick. I know Nick. He's a cool guy. Like, and we go to the coffee shop. I mean, that's a great idea for a commercial. We see each other, and it's like there's no bad blood between us. We just don't agree on something. And at some point, we lost this idea that we're not allowed to disagree. It's okay. Like that person in your family or that person that's a friend or maybe used to be a friend, if they disagree, it's okay. It's okay to disagree. That's what makes the world go. Surround yourself with people that have differing opinions. It'll make you a more well-rounded person. It'll make life more exciting, more fun. And I think that that is one thing that is unique about Owosso, I think, because here, like, we all know each other. We really do. And there is this sense of, I know a lot of people that I would consider dear friends that I disagree with wholeheartedly on a lot of things, but that's just that guy or that lady. Like, I like that person, and so it doesn't matter that they have differing opinions. And so I would encourage everybody listening, like, before you determine to write somebody off because of what they believe or how they express themselves, just have a conversation with them. An open, honest conversation. I think it can solve a lot of problems. Well, listen, we could talk a ton about our community, and we have, and we will continue to do so, but we're going to transition here into another section of our podcast. But before we do that, we have this recurring segment. I'm getting ready to send you a text right now. Man. It's called Explain That Post. Okay, so I just sent you 3 pictures. Our audience can see these 3 pictures.
Oh,
and so the first one, we're going to start with the first one that I like is Nick Pidek with the guitar, screaming into the mic, a fresh-faced, brace-faced
wow.
Nick Pidek. Tell us what's going on here. I mean, I think we can tell what's going on, but give us some context on this photo.
Oh, wow. So the braces are because I think it was at the age where I was going to fall off my parents' insurance. So I decided to get braces in my 20s.
Gotta hurry up and get that.
Thank you, Mom and Dad, for that. That looks like I was playing a show. I don't know where that's at, but...
You're really feeling
So Save Me days.
You're really feeling the music right there. I mean, you are into it. There is no holding back right there. Do you have any idea what lyric you're screaming in that picture?
I don't. I don't.
That's pretty awesome.
Most of my songs have some sort of screaming like hardcore, but like just
if you're gonna do it, that's how you got to do it. You got to go all in. There's no halfway to do it. Okay. So the second one here is with you and your wife. I don't think you're married at this point, but this is a mustached Nick. Like.
Yes.
The mustache, not everybody can pull off the mustache. So tell us what's going on here with the mustache.
So our friends Joe and Erica Madison, who you should have on your podcast, by the way.
We're going to.
They've been dear friends. I've known Erica for a very, very long time, since high school, and then met Joe when Erica and Joe became friends and then started dating. They're just 2 of the most like precious human beings. So they have this like annual Halloween party, and... So we dressed up as Joe and Erica for the Halloween party. So this is me as Joe. He used to work at Apple. So and they have this cat Bella. So we were just pretending to be Joe and Erica for Halloween.
So does Erica do some sort of ballet? Is that what's going on there with your wife?
I have no idea why Mandy.
That stance. Well, I was going to ask if you worked at the Apple store, but that's funny that you were impersonating somebody else. Yeah. This last one, I think you got to explain, because here's Nick holding a Starbucks cup. Yeah. Like, what's that all about, Nick?
Oh man, I think
that doesn't. I mean, I zoomed in. That is not a Foster coffee cup right there.
Not. We were in Ohio, actually. Yeah, I know where this is. This is a Starbucks in Ohio. We were helping a friend of ours, Daniel Groves. He's a phenomenal worship leader. Wrote that song "Healing Is Here." Mm-hmm. He had a school of ministry in Columbus, Ohio, and we'd drive down and help him with the school, and they had students go through, and so
they don't have a Foster coffee.
They did not have a Foster coffee, and this was by the places we were staying. So
a man's got to drink coffee, right?
And
you got to drink
coffee.
coffee.
You will notice though that is not coffee. It's actually just water.
Oh, okay. Well, that's all right.
It's not that incriminating.
I see. Okay. Well, it could be. I mean, there could have been coffee in there before. We don't know, but yeah. Well, thank you for taking the time to explain those to us. We did a deep dive. We had to find. I mean, there was a lot to choose from.
You didn't dive deep enough because I'm sure there's worse stuff.
Normally, we only do one, and we were talking about let's just do all three. Let's just do all.
That's because I deleted my MySpace.
That's good. Okay, so the last thing we'd like to talk about here is, the big elephant in the room is 2020. Obviously, 2020 hit everybody. The world just kind of changed, and it's been a year now. March of last year, our governor just kind of locked everybody down. We were told, 2 weeks to slow the spread, and then we kind of started to do that, and then it was 2 weeks to flatten the curve, and it just kind of kept going 2 weeks at a time. And I think the thing that was so disheartening for people is that there was never any end in sight. There was never a plan. It was just always 2 weeks at a time. And then we'd get close to that 2 weeks and think, okay, we're up. And then we extended another 2 weeks or 4 weeks. And it's been challenging as a business owner. As you know, we've observed a lot of businesses in our community that have had a real challenge with this, particularly the restaurant industry, which I know you're in food service. So I want to talk a little bit about the challenges. But what were the specific regulations put on you as a coffee shop owner? What were some of the things that you guys had to do? And did you ever have to actually close? I guess I'll let you explain what were some of the regulations that you guys had to overcome as a coffee shop?
Yeah. So March of 2020, we first saw inclinations of something happening in the East Lansing store because MSU went all digital before the governor made her announcement. Then I think it was a day later, Governor Whitmer had made an announcement that bars and restaurants would be closing for in-service dining. So they could still do carry out. So it was kind of one of those situations where everything was kind of sliding really, really quickly. So what we did is we ended up closing all the stores for just a period of time. And then we had to we didn't know what was going to happen. Let me backtrack. We tried to stay open, and we just, with everybody not knowing what to do in the stay-at-home order, sales just dropped. So we could still be open, but no one would. It's not like even it was at the end of the year where people were being conscientious of COVID, but they were still supporting small business. No one knew what was going on, so the fear was.
People were literally staying home.
Yes. So we tried to stay open, and we're just this isn't going to work. From a payroll perspective, from a cost perspective, from a health perspective, we don't know. Is it by touch? Is it by air? Is it by looking at somebody?
Yeah,
none
of us know. Yeah.
So we ended up closing all the locations, and we just took a breather. And then John and I were okay, we're the owners of this company. What can we do to make this thing survive? So we're well, let's just go back to you and me slinging coffee in Owosso. So we did. It was we won't put anyone else's life at jeopardy. And the rule was such that if you're the owner of the company or the essential component of running your operations, you can still be open. So John and I were it's our life, it's our family. We can make that decision, and we're going to do that. So it was just us, and for about a couple of weeks, it was just him and I. And
it
was actually kind of, in some sense, it was fun because it was just him and I back when we first started the company. It just it was really busy. We had long days,
nostalgic,
and but ebb and flow, and we had fun and just made the best of it. And then ultimately, the restrictions changed throughout the year. We were able to come back open. So our Flint store and our East Lansing store were closed for pretty much the whole month of April. And then the PPP thing got rolled out through Congress, so we applied for that and got approved. And that's when we started bringing the staff back and trying to make sense of how do we limit this thing along for the time being.
Yeah. So what were some of the, obviously with the vision statement, the philosophy of fostering community through coffee, big part of your brand is not just serving a cup, but it's really, like you said, getting to know people. And all of your shops are set up to where people can come in and sit and work. And I mean, when I first started my business, Foster Coffee was my office, 3 or 4 days a week, because it's hard to work at home with 6 kids, and there's a lot of people do that. It's a meeting place. I went there this morning, and some of our friends were down there having a meeting. And so that philosophy of not just here's a cup of coffee, now go. I mean, that's just one element, right? Getting the coffee, but the element of community is now gone for a time, so what is some of the innovative things you guys did throughout the course of 2020 to really stay connected with your people, stay connected with your employees, connected with your guests, your customers, to really kind of keep you guys out there?
Yeah, so two things. From a technological standpoint, we knew it was already on our roadmap to implement online ordering, so like for our cafe pickup. And with the closure, we ramped that up dramatically. Like, I remember spending some really like sleepless nights, late nights, just trying to figure all that out. Like, it wasn't just implementing a single solution, it was implementing a solution that fit with everything else, so 3 locations. We're trying to think, how do we put something in place now that also can stay with continuity? We don't want to train people on how to like use a system and then we change 4 months down the road. So it's like, how does this all work together? There's like the accounting component. How do we record all the sales from a digital perspective to get to our QuickBooks? Like, just stuff that's not fun that you don't think about with a business, right? It's not just like, because for us, we want to be diligent. We want to be a good steward of what's happening. We want to be able to see what the data is telling us. Like, what are people ordering? How are they ordering? Not just we had X number of sales. So that's from a technology standpoint, we speeded that through. From a community standpoint, we took the approach of just communicating with people about our COVID precautions. So, we let people know this is what we're doing, this is how we're doing it, this is how we're going about it, with the caveat of like, we don't have a team of lawyers and experts. Right. It is us. Right. So like, we are honoring you, we're honoring the state, whether you agree with it or not. It's like, we didn't want to spend our energy fighting anything. We just want to stay open. Like, let us do our thing.
Let us run our business. Yeah.
We're already under that with the health code in general from a restaurant. Like, we have specifications to stay through. So we're like, it's a new set of rules. How do we just serve people? And so we took that approach of just telling people, like, be honest with them. Like, this is what we're doing. This is how we're doing it. We had one instance where we had some staff that got COVID, and so we would quarantine everybody else, get everybody tested, and then there were some instances where we had to close down cafes until we knew, and just letting people know, like, this is what's going on. So communication was really key. We built up a landing page that was our main homepage. When you went to fostercoffee.co, it went right to our COVID page. And then from a product standpoint, we pivoted. We brought in this new product called the half gallons, the groceries. So we worked with one of our local partners, which is Mooville in Nashville. And we're like, you are supplying us with milk. Do you have any empty gallon jugs around that we can buy from you? And they're like, yeah. So we created a sticker and printed them at Speedy Print over, 2 doors down from us, 3 doors down, not the band. And then, so we put together this half gallon. It was great because
Isn't
people
that
could
3
order
doors
them.
Down?
What's that?
I think that's 3 doors down.
Yeah. They could order them. It was a half gallon, and we took the farmer's market. We're like, you can now get the farmer's market in a half gallon, so you can take it home. So there was this element of, I think being 4 years old at that period as a company, like, there is this tendency, and you said this earlier, of just kind of like, this is what we've always done, and it's nice and it's easy, and we've got this formula. We were doing in-person events, children's reading hours, community gatherings, like art events, all these things that just went away. But we're like, how do we reinvent the wheel? It's like, we had to go back to being Entrepreneur 101. And this is what you have to stay, I think. You have to stay with this mentality all the time, which is let's try something out. We tried some things during COVID, not from a health perspective, but product perspective and, technology standpoint. It just didn't work. They failed. But we also did some things that succeeded. And it's like, everybody wants to talk about like Amazon, but how many of us remember the Fire Phone? The Amazon Fire Phone. Yeah. See, you don't even know what it is. It's like, it was like a $100 million failure from Amazon. They tried getting into the phone business, and they failed, but they've done some other things well, right? Exactly. So I think that sort of component of COVID squeezed everybody, and it squeezed us in ways we didn't want to be squeezed. And I'm just talking from a business perspective. I'm not talking about health and loss of human life. Like, it's tragic and terrible. What I'm just speaking now to is from a business perspective, operating within that, trying to keep things on the table and things from falling off. Is we had to just figure things out from a new perspective, and it was exhausting. There were a period of time where, like, John and I didn't know what to do, how to do it. And then, 35 people are asking us for answers. And it's like,
Right.
this is what we know.
This is what we know.
And it's not much.
That's the challenge. I mean, entrepreneurs, yes, we have to always innovate. And listen, we are surrounded by some awesome people in our community. It has been so cool. Like you said, loss of human life and the tragedy of COVID is horrific and terrible. But for me to see some of our local entrepreneurs that we're surrounded with, and to see some of the creative things that they did to stay open and to serve their people. And the challenge is, as a business owner, you're like, yes, of course I care about people. That's my whole life. My whole business is serving people. So yes, but then if you do anything that's outside of the regulations, you kind of have this target on you that you don't care about people. But then you're conflicted with, I also have my family who I have to take care of. I have to feed them, and I have to clothe them, and I have to provide a house for them. And if I don't have my business, I can't do that. And so there's this conflict, right, of trying to follow the regulations and do everything that's right and show compassion and be empathetic to what's going on, but to also find ways to bring in money to support the people that are most important to you, and that's your family. And then like you said, you have the element of all these 35 to 40 employees that are counting on you for their livelihood as well. And so it's such a challenge. And I think sometimes people don't understand that conflict that an entrepreneur or a business owner has to go through, because at the end of the day, we all want to do the right thing, but we also have to provide. We can't just go and no entrepreneur, no business owner just wants to have a handout. We don't just want, okay, well, the government will bail us out. Like, we appreciate those helpful funds. I mean, those things needed to happen, but we would rather just go to work, right? We'd rather just serve our customers. And so that's such a challenge, but it has been so cool for me to watch what some of our local entrepreneurs have done creatively to still be able to serve their customers. And a lot of people have come out on this other side, not that we're fully on the other side of this thing yet, but a lot of people have come up with things that are really going to help them into the future, like the online ordering. You said that was something you were wanting to do anyways, and it kind of forced you to have to do it. And now that's a whole nother element of your business. The gallon jugs, something that's really cool and something that you had to do. And so, seeing some of those things that were birthed out of that has been really, really cool to watch. I like to focus on the positive. There's certainly a lot of negative things we could talk about, but I love to see the positive things that came from it. And there will still continue to be positive things that will come about as people go through this, and if you have the right mindset. So the last thing I'd like to ask you, and then we're going to close the show with our most popular segment called Say It in 60. What is just, what is some good advice that Nick Pidek would give to other business owners in our community, or any business owner in a community listening today as we navigate these times? What is just some good advice you'd like to give to people listening? That's a loaded question.
Find something that you love to do. Find something you're passionate about, and write a very strong vision that other people can run with. There's a saying, it's in the Bible, but it's Habakkuk 2:2, like, write the vision, make it plain that those who read it can run with it. It's not just your idea and something that you're passionate about that will be birthed into the world. It is actually more about the other people that come alongside that vision to make it a reality. Like, anything that Foster is today or will be in the future is a result of, this is the vision, this is where we're heading. And John and my job is to equip other people to get there. Mm-hmm. It's less about our thing, our thing, or whatever. Even if you take the community, for example, it's not about my community and my neighborhood, it's ours. Mm-hmm. What can we do to get in the same vein, to go in the same direction, to find common ground, of common vision of something to build together? And in a company perspective, we found something that we loved that was worth fighting for, which is community. And we wrapped a business around it. And then we just constantly ring that bell with other people, with our staff, with our customers. It's on our cup, but it's something that resonates with us, because that's the universal thing. Come COVID, come whatever else, like, we're going to just do that. Like, that's why we exist. if you know that, I really believe you can handle the ups and downs. I think that was our true north. That's what just kept us going in that direction, and helped us just see the why behind it. Simon Sinek, if you've, followed his stuff, is like the why. It's like, that is our why. It's our vision. And that's the essence of story. Like we have this purpose. We have this time here, right? However short it is, however long this thing lasts, let it be known that we charged full force into this vision. Mm-hmm. And I think if you're, listening to this and you have this idea that may seem crazy, just know that like some person from Owosso or Corunna or wherever can have also a crazy idea. If you just stick to it and help other people see the vision and help other people achieve that vision, it's more about the other people than it is about you or your thing or your idea or your business.
Yeah, that's excellent advice. And you preface that with, I don't know if this is good advice. I would say that's excellent advice, and thank you for sharing that. So we have this canvas in our office in the bullpen that it just says, remember why you started. And that's really more for me, because I had a very specific reason for why I started my company. And I always want to remember that. I don't want to lose sight of it as you get focused on the numbers and the projections and the spreadsheets and all the things that have to happen to keep a business afloat. I want to always remember why I started it. Very specific reason for me. And I've shared that on the podcast before, but I would encourage you, if you're listening, like, I'm sure you had a reason for starting your company. And as you're going through this tumultuous time and trying to learn all of these things, just remember what was the reason behind you starting, and don't lose sight of that. And I always say happiness is underrated. Like, don't forget about your own happiness and the happiness of your family and those around you, and try to find that reason and go back to it. And sometimes, like you said, just getting back in the shop with just you and John, even though it was a lot of work, it kind of brought back this nostalgic vibe of, hey, this is why we started doing this, and it was fun. And it allowed you to kind of refocus and do some things and get back into that creative mindset of an entrepreneur. Like, okay, what are we going to do? And I don't think you should ever lose that. I think you should always be re-innovating and always reinventing, the things and the processes to make them better and refine them. So again, thank you for sharing all that information. There's a lot of things that, as we've talked, we've never got the opportunity to learn those things about each other. And so I appreciate you being willing to come on and share those things.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you. But right now, this is important. We are going to transition to a segment called Say It in 60. We have a little spinning wheel that Jordan's going to give you here in a second. But we're going to give you 60 seconds to answer 10 very important questions. Now, there's no wrong answer because they're your answers. So you don't have to get these answers right in 60 seconds. You just have to answer them all in 60 seconds. And when you spin that wheel, you're going to actually be playing for a $25 gift card to one of our local small businesses here. Whoa. Now, if you win Foster Coffee, we'll let you spin again. Right? We actually thought about just making them all Foster Coffee and like giving you a $25 gift card to Foster, but that would kind of be cruel. But this is one of our fun ways of supporting small businesses. So if you push that little white button in the middle, okay, we'll see what you're playing for there. And it landed on Roma's back there. Actually, we just did a promotional video for them. It comes out this next week. We're building a website for them. Great small business here. They've been around for a long time, new ownership, but they still have that Chicago-style deep dish, and they have some really great things on their menu. So we're going to put 60 seconds on the clock. Okay. We're going to give you the opportunity to rapid fire answer these questions, and if you do, you will go home today with a $25 gift card.
If I answer all 10 questions?
Yes. Like I said, they don't have to be right. That's your answer, so you can make stuff up. Okay. But this is out there forever. So if you just answer them in 60 seconds, then you'll go home today with a $25 gift card to Roma's Back Door. Jordan, we got 60 seconds on the clock? Oh, no, you don't have to do that. We can add that in post. All right. Are you ready?
Sure.
Okay. Jordan, are you ready? Yeah. 60 seconds. The time starts now. What is a must-read book?
Dostoevsky, anything.
What is a daily habit that everyone should do?
Read.
What is your favorite podcast?
Darknet Diaries.
What is a must-binge TV series?
Right now, The Crown.
What's your why?
People. What's
your best piece of advice?
I said it on the podcast.
Ooh, good job. Favorite quote?
Habakkuk 2:2.
Who do you look up to?
My parents.
Oh, okay, my parents. All right. What is success to you? Last question.
Doing what you love.
Doing one? Did he make it? Wow. This is a new record. I think you rattled through those. How much time? 38 seconds. Wow, 22 seconds to spare. That is definitely a new record. Most people are landing the plane right at the spare time. So congratulations, studio audience. Round of applause.
Thank you.
Nick, good job. You'll be going home today with a gift card. So thank you for doing that. And again, thank you for being on the show. But before we let you go, I want you to look into that camera right there.
Okay.
And I want you to tell our audience where they can find Foster Coffee or anything you want people to know about. Tell them how they can find you, social media, email, whatever. Let them know where they can find you.
Yeah, so fostercoffee.co for Foster Coffee. If you're an Owosso resident and you have a question about the city, you can go to the City of Owosso's website, Google it, because I don't know it by heart, the URL, and you can find my contact information. Happy to hear from you. You can call me, email me. You can yell at me, but mostly just give me some good advice.
We can't MySpace you anymore.
You cannot MySpace me.
Facebook, Instagram, find them. And listen, if you like good coffee and if you're in our area and you haven't tried Foster Coffee, you've been living under a rock. It's awesome coffee. It's a cool place to visit. And if you're in Flint and Lansing, go try it out. But you can also order it. If you're a coffee snob like I am, if you go in our office, I have about probably 70 bags of whole bean coffee. Most of them are probably expired. I can't even use them anymore. But I love coffee. Anywhere I travel, I stop and buy if I can find whole bean coffee, I buy it. And of course, we have some Foster in there. But if you're a coffee lover, just go on their website and order some whole bean coffee. They'll ship it right to you. It's really, really good. And they have a couple of different blends. I love the white bucket. That's one of my favorites. And so go on there, check it out, try it out. It's really, really good coffee, and you'll love it. But again, thank you for joining us today. Thank you, Renzo.
Thank you.
Good luck to you and your wife. Your wife owns Aviator Jane. She's been on the show. You guys are just a family of entrepreneurs, and you just had a baby.
Yeah.
Tell us about the baby.
Yeah, she's 3 weeks old as of yesterday. Little Georgia Alina.
So is that 3 girls?
I have 3 girls. Yep. So 3, 2, and 3 weeks old.
Wow, that's you need some boys. You need some boys.
I don't think we're done yet.
Yeah,
so.
okay. Well,
we're coming for you.
We started. Yeah, we have 6. We have 3 boys, 3 girls, and they're both a lot of fun. They're both challenging at different stages of their life. But congratulations on the baby, and good luck in everything you guys are doing forward. We love working with you guys, and we look forward to seeing and following your guys' successes for years to come. And thank you for joining us. As my mother always said, you can't and never could until you tried. So go out there and try something great, my friends, and don't take the easy way out. We'll see you next time.